Did you know that a single number appears at the center of several ancient spiritual traditions, hidden in the structure of the human body, encoded in sacred teachings, and placed at the highest symbolic level of one of the most mysterious brotherhoods in history? That number is 33. In Freemasonry, the 33rd degree is often spoken about with an almost mythical aura. It is surrounded by speculation, fascination, and sometimes misunderstanding. But beyond the rumors and conspiracies, the number 33 carries a deeper meaning. It holds a metaphysical symbolism that reaches far beyond Masonry itself and connects with a much older current of wisdom that scholars of the perennial philosophy have been tracing for centuries. To understand why the number 33 became so important, we need to go back to a time when numbers were not merely tools for counting. In ancient civilizations, numbers were seen as expressions of cosmic principles. The Greek philosopher Pythagoras taught that numbers were the hidden architecture of reality itself. In mystical traditions, such as the Kabbalah, Hermetic philosophy, and early esoteric schools, numbers were considered living symbols that revealed the structure of the universe and the path of human transformation. Within that symbolic language, the number 3 has always held a special place. It represents the triad, which is body, mind, and spirit. Creation itself is often described through a triple principle of beginning, middle, and end. When this triad is doubled, forming 3 and 3, the symbolism intensifies. It suggests a harmony between two worlds, the visible and the invisible, the human and the divine. And this is where the deeper symbolism of 33 begins to emerge. Freemasonry, particularly within the Scottish Rite, organizes its philosophical teachings into a system of 33 degrees. But contrary to what many people assume, these degrees are not simply ranks of authority or power. They are stages of symbolic instruction. They form a progressive system designed to guide the initiate through layers of philosophical and moral reflection. The first 3 degrees form the foundation, introducing the essential moral allegories of the craft. Beyond them, the higher degrees expand these teachings through symbolism drawn from ancient traditions, sacred architecture, mythology, and spiritual philosophy. The 33rd degree, often called the Inspector General, honorary, is not merely a position, but a recognition of dedication to the ideals of the order. Albert Pike, one of the most influential thinkers within the Scottish Rite, wrote extensively about the symbolic nature of these teachings. For Pike, the degrees were never about domination or secrecy for its own sake. They were allegories designed to awaken a deeper awareness within the initiate. But what makes the number 33 so intriguing is that its symbolism appears far beyond the Masonic system. Consider the human body itself. The human spine is composed of 33 vertebrae. In several esoteric traditions, particularly in yogic and tantric philosophy, the spine is seen as the central axis of spiritual ascent. Energy, often referred to as kundalini, is said to rise through this axis until it reaches the crown of consciousness. For many students of comparative mysticism, this parallel is far from accidental. The symbolism becomes even more fascinating when we consider the life of Jesus in Christian tradition. According to most historical interpretations, Christ was 33 years old at the time of his crucifixion and resurrection. In esoteric Christianity, this age is not seen merely as a historical detail, but as a symbol of spiritual completion. It represents the moment when the human and the divine are united. And this pattern goes back even further. In the Vedic traditions of ancient India, texts refer to 33 devas, or divine principles, that govern the cosmos. In various ancient cosmologies, the number appears as a marker of spiritual hierarchy or cosmic order. Scholars of the perennial philosophy, such as René Guénon, have pointed out that sacred numbers often reappear across cultures because they express universal metaphysical ideas rather than isolated cultural inventions. Now, here is something interesting I would like to hear your opinion about. Do you think the number 33 appears repeatedly across these traditions? Purely by coincidence, or could it be pointing toward a symbolic language shared by ancient wisdom schools? I am really curious to read your thoughts in the comments. Within initiatic traditions, symbols like 33 are not meant to be interpreted only intellectually. They are meant to be lived. For initiates, the number represents the journey of refinement, which is the gradual transformation of the human being. Eliphas Levi, one of the great occult philosophers of the 19th century, often spoke about the idea that true initiation is not about belonging to a secret society, but about mastering oneself. And in many ways, that is exactly how experienced practitioners approach this symbolism. The ascent represented by 33 is seen as the elevation of consciousness. It is about overcoming ignorance, balancing the inner forces of the psyche, and aligning one's life with higher principles such as wisdom, justice, and compassion. I remember when I first started studying these symbolic systems more deeply, something about this pattern genuinely surprised me. The more I looked into it, the more it seemed that the number was acting like a map. It felt like a map not of external power, but of inner transformation. And honestly, I think this perspective changes the way we look at the entire subject. Unfortunately, the number 33 has often been surrounded by sensational myths. Popular culture sometimes portrays it as if it were a secret code for global power, or hidden control structures. But when we look at the writings of serious Masonic scholars such as Manly P. Hall, we find a very different explanation. Hall described the higher degrees of initiation not as positions of domination, but as symbolic acknowledgments of philosophical maturity and service to humanity. In other words, the true meaning of the 33rd degree has much less to do with authority and much more to do with responsibility. The initiate who symbolically reaches that stage is expected to act as a pillar. They become someone who supports the structure of wisdom, ethics, and knowledge within society. And that leads us back to the deeper symbolism hinted at throughout this entire discussion. Across many ancient traditions, the enlightened individual is often described as a bridge between heaven and earth, someone who has aligned the spiritual and the material dimensions of existence. When we consider the spine with its 33 vertebrae acting as the central axis of the body, the symbolism becomes even more powerful. The human being itself becomes the temple, and the ascent of consciousness becomes the real initiation. So when people ask what the number 33 truly represents in Freemasonry, the answer is far more philosophical than many expect. It is not simply the final step of a hierarchy. It is the symbol of a completed inner journey. It marks the moment when knowledge, discipline, and spiritual awareness converge into a higher state of responsibility. And this brings us back to the question we started with. What does it really mean to reach the 33? From an esoteric perspective, it does not mean standing above others. It means standing in alignment with something greater. It represents the human being who has climbed the symbolic ladder of understanding and now serves as a conscious link between wisdom and the world. But I would like to leave you with one final reflection. When you look at all these patterns, the spine, the traditions, the symbolism within Masonry and ancient philosophy, do you think the number 33 is simply a historical curiosity? Or could it actually represent a universal map of spiritual evolution that humanity has been preserving for thousands of years? I would really like to know what you think. Share your perspective in the comments, because discussions like this are where some of the most interesting insights begin to emerge.